Hello and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Stacey Sims, and each week I'll share the top diabetes stories and headlines of the past 7 days. Now, whether you're joining me live on Facebook or you're watching or listening after, I'm here to get you up to speed quickly on what's happening with diabetes technology, research, and in our community. And since these are headlines and summaries, as always, you will find all the sources and links in the Facebook comments and in the show notes over at diabetes-connections.com. In the News is brought to you by Inside the Breakthrough, a new history of science podcast full of did you know stuff. All right, let's take a look at what's happening in the news this week. Couple of buzzy slides from Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. First, this one. This is from their WatchOS 8 update. Now, they never said the words blood glucose out loud, but this slide was shown featuring the graphic blood glucose highlights. Now, that likely means pulling the data from existing apps like Dexcom or Dario or OneDrop. But there are always rumors about Apple releasing a glucose sensor of its own. We shall see. And big thank you to Nerdabetic for bringing this to our attention. Another diabetes shout out in this slide, same presentation, about time-sensitive notifications. If you look closely, you can see the Happy Bob app, which puts funny messages along with your glucose notifications. Lots of news out of the recent Advanced Technology and Treatments in Diabetes Conference, or ATTD. Now, Dexcom showed this slide about their upcoming G7. We have reported about this a lot in the last 2 years. I'm going to link up our previous episodes, but the new info, if you look closely here, includes a 30-minute warm-up time as opposed to 2 hours right now, and direct-to-watch capability. Direct-to-watch from Dexcom, that means you don't need your phone with you to see your blood glucose on the watch face anymore. Now, this was first announced in June of 2017 with the G5, but it proved a lot more difficult to implement than expected. I am talking to Dexcom for the podcast later this month, so we're going to get an update on what this means. Now, the G7, you can see it there in the middle. And if you're listening on the podcast, I will link this up in our Facebook group. The G7 is a smaller all-in-one with sensor and transmitter applied together. It is not FDA approved yet, so there is no timeline for release. I know that's always a big question. Also, Dexcom put out a study that says people with type 2 who use basal insulin benefit from the use of CGM. The mobile study took place over 8 months. And those who used the CGM increased time and range and showed a full point drop on A1Cs on average. New data presented on Omnipod 5 with Horizon. Now, this is just an abstract, but the full study will be released later this month. This is Insulet's hybrid closed-loop system, where it works with the Dexcom to keep a user within a targeted blood sugar range. This study looked at children and adults ages 6 to 70 to measure the safety of the new system. A1Cs came down, time and range went up, very low occurrence of hypoglycemia, and researchers concluded it was safe. The Omnipod 5 operates in 2 modes, an automated mode and a manual mode. The system provides automatic insulin delivery with customizable glucose targets from 110 to 150, which can be adjusted by time of day. Omnipod 5 with Horizon is in front of the FDA right now, so there is no timeline on release. Also at ATTD, Dario Health looking at outcomes from their highly personalized apps and systems. Dario's study found that personalizing the clinical interventions in response to unique individual actions really helps. That's opposed to systems with more generalized predictions. This study showed more frequency in blood sugar testing and monitoring in those who received a personalized intervention. And it is early on here, but a new closed loop system that knows when you've eaten is being tested. This was a small trial in adolescents and young adults, and it's out of UVA, the same place that developed what became Tandem's Control-IQ. And these researchers say teenagers are particularly prone to skipping meal boluses. This system, known right now as Rocket AP, contains an artificial intelligence bolus priming system that uses CGM to basically decide if you've eaten without bolusing. If it thinks you have, it will automatically dose. Now, here's where it gets very interesting. The median time in range after a bolused meal, all right, you took your insulin for your meal, was 100% with the Rocket AP system and 93% with the control system. But it was a corresponding 83% versus 53% after a meal without a bolus. Again, that's 83% time in range when you completely forget to enter your meal bolus. This definitely bears watching. Up next, a diabetes drug is approved for weight loss. But first, a quick break. Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inside the Breakthrough. This is a podcast that mixes historical wisdom with modern insight. It's a science show that is also very entertaining. I have been following it. I used to say subscribed, but Apple changed that now. So now we say follow. I've been following it since it came out in January. And the latest episode talks about scientists who knew they were onto something, but they needed to see things with their own eyes. How actually seeing something like a kraken makes a huge difference. It also meant a name change for what some had thought had only been a myth. And this actually really does relate to diabetes. So listen to Inside the Breakthrough wherever you listen to podcasts. Back to the news. The FDA has approved the medication Wegovy, a higher dose of the diabetes drug semaglutide, to be used as a weight management drug in patients with obesity. It's the first drug for chronic weight management that is approved by the FDA since 2014. It is injected under the skin once a week. People in the study lost an average of 12% of their body weight. People with type 2 diabetes lost 6%. No reason given for the difference. And there are some intestinal side effects, but Wegovy is said to be safer than older weight loss drugs. And finally, the power of peer support was shown at ATTD in a presentation by Kelly Close and Diatribe. Their survey showed engagement in the diabetes online community didn't just make people feel better emotionally, which of course is great, but also predicted better glycemic outcomes. Those most involved in the community increased their chances of having an A1C under 7. And that is Diabetes Connections in the news. If you like it, please share it and feel free to send me your news tips. Stacy at diabetes-connections.com. Please join me wherever you get podcasts for our next episode. On Tuesday, I'm talking to the folks from Beta Bionics for the first time in a long time to get an update on the iLet pump. And the episode that is out right now is all about what college students want you to know. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you back here soon.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.